Clune's Booktown Festival is a celebration of the book, filled with bookstalls, author talks, workshops and thought-provoking conversations in the historic Victorian township of Clunes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jane Sullivan. I am a writer. I am a columnist for The Age. I write about books, and I'm really thrilled to be back in Clunes again. This is about my third or fourth visit, I think, and every time I come it seems to get better and better. So I love this venue as well. Isn't it fabulous? And just going to do an acknowledgement of country now. We respectfully acknowledge and extend our appreciation to the Dja Dja Wurrung people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we celebrate our love of stories, song and culture. And today I am going to be talking to the wonderful Sofie Laguna. And you probably know about Sofie, but I'll just fill you in a little bit. She's the author of 5 books for adults and umpteen books for children. I'm not sure exactly how many. Do you remember?
I think around 25.
Wow. She's won or she's been shortlisted for lots of awards, perhaps most notably the 2015 Miles Franklin Award, which she won for her second adult novel, The Eye of the Sheep. When I think of Sofie's work, I think of young people, often damaged or traumatised, but somehow commanding our attention, our empathy and our hope. I find when I read her work, she makes me sigh, laugh, cry and reflect. So we'll be talking today mostly about her latest novel, Underworld, and I like the way Penguin blurbs it. It's for anyone ready to feel, anyone who has ever been 14. So, Sofie, can we start with a reading and perhaps give us a little bit of context as to what's going on?
So, yes, the story opens when Martha Mullins, our protagonist, is 14. And this is going to get messy in that I have to talk about periods, which, interestingly, I still find that 14-year-old still finds a little uncomfortable. So Martha's 14 and she's got this awful backache. She goes to stay with her mum and her mother's glamorous circle of friends a couple of hours out of town on the beach, and she has this backache that she doesn't know is heralding in this first period. How's that, Jane, for a description?
That's a good start, yes.
Of how, and so every day she's walked along the beach with her mum and her mum's friends. She's feeling increasingly shy and awkward. She can't meet people's eyes very easily. She just wants to be in her room reading. She doesn't understand why she's being a grump and why she feels this way. She decides to walk down to the beach on her own very early one morning. The night before, there'd been a dinner party. It was noisy and Martha couldn't sleep. And when she went out to the living room to get a drink of water, she encountered her mother, who was unfortunately dismissive and rejecting. And that's how it is between Martha and her mother. And Martha doesn't understand what's gone wrong, and it affects the way she feels about herself. So she steals out of the house, very out of character, and goes down to the beach on her own. And she walks along out on this jetty. Martha pulled off her cardigan, dropping it at her feet. She unzipped her cords and stepped out of them, wearing only her singlet and underwear. She could feel the cool breeze against her bare skin. Aurora, as well as being goddess of the dawn, was goddess of the wind. How lovely it felt to have Aurora blowing up and down her legs. She pulled herself up until she was straddling the top railing, just like she'd seen the boy do the day before. It was a long way to the water, 15 feet at least. Martha was afraid of heights. At Dowell Heath, she could never face the climbing ropes, nor the high platform in the school gymnasium. But she wasn't afraid now. Slowly, working to keep her balance on the railing, she stood to her full height, raised her head and spread her arms, took a deep breath, then jumped. She smacked the surface, was hit by the cold. She opened her eyes, tumbling over in the water, and swam down. Who was there? Proserpina? She kept going, kicking her legs, sweeping her arms deeper and deeper. Proserpina, queen of the underworld. Where were the gates? Would she see the gates? Her chest was tight too tight. She must have air. She began to swim back up, kicking and struggling. She would explode.
And if you want to know what happens next, you have to read the book.
It's interesting to meet her again, you know. It's been a few weeks, and to meet her again on the page was interesting.
It's like she's always been there waiting for you.
She has.
Yeah. Now, I'm just going to diverge a bit from the book and go back in time. I'm going to ask you how you got into writing in the first place, because I believe you wanted to be an actor.
I wanted to be an actor very, very much. From a very young age, I was making up plays. I was a pretty bossy older sister, and I would put my siblings into those plays. I was very single-minded and very certain that I would act. And it was a burning ambition. I did write a lot of poetry as well. So there was writing. I loved writing at school. But I was single-minded about this dream, and I studied acting and I worked as an actor. I did work as an actor for about 10 years. I always kept a journal in that time. I always loved words and language. I always read, but it was very much about acting. I got some work, and I was also frequently unemployed, which was pretty tough because I had an idealised notion of how life would unfold for me, and I thought I could, in some ways, the way young people do, that I was in control of all of that. So it was a pretty tough road, lots of unemployment. I worked as a children's fair. I was a fairy every weekend.
Tell us a bit more about that.
I would put on wings and a tiara, and I would drive all over the suburbs of Melbourne, and I would entertain children. All the way in the car, I would be so full of dread. I feel terrible confessing this. And the minute, say the party would go from, 12 to 1:30, the minute it was 12, just something happened. And so even though it was just children's entertainment on a Saturday morning, coping with birthday cake and tantrums, still the connection I had with that posse of children was pretty incredible. I was aware of that because I had, I was trained as an actor. So it was just like theatre. It was like theatre for me. So I also worked in theatre and education. So I played a 5-year-old. So coming back to me. And we toured Tasmania for about 7 months with me as a 5-year-old. So I did learn this is something I take to pretty naturally. And that's right, mid-90s I did begin to study writing because I thought perhaps I'll write a show for myself or a film, and all this, the unemployment was pretty terrifying. And so I thought I'll study writing on the side. And then at the end of the 90s, after a pretty gruelling year of theatre and education, again, working in very close confines with other actors, that didn't always go so well for me. Other people were a problem.
No.
A lot. It would always go wrong. Either, you'd fall in love or out of love. It was always difficult dynamics. Of course, I love being in character and being in costume when it's going well. Anyway, I'm digressing. So I just thought to myself at the end of 1999, or was it the beginning of that year, I remember a crystal clear thought, I'm just going to concentrate a little bit more on writing this year. And within weeks of that little light bulb moment, I had my small writing group composed of other students that I'd met at the RMIT, and I wrote a children's picture book manuscript. And I wrote it probably, we literally wrote, in the moment at one of our houses, and I got to the end of the My Yellow Blankie and I put the pen down and I thought, that's my first picture book.
And just like that, you became a writer?
There's the long and the short. I put the pen down and I thought there's a quality there that's not been there before. It was very light, it was very raw, it was very natural, and it not a lot of control or a lot of intellectual kind of interference, if I can put it that way. The same way being a 5-year-old. So then, of course, I worked on that My Yellow Blankie. I was pretty obsessed with My Yellow Blankie. And then I submitted it. Is this the story you want to hear, how this played out? So then I looked in a bookshop, what are the main addresses? This is pre-internet. What are the main addresses of Penguin and Scholastic? And I looked them up and I sent it in the letterbox, in the post, to 5 of the big important publishers and waited for about probably 12 to 16 weeks. And then these letters began to come to me. Mm-hmm. And I was pretty excited because I had that lovely, positive response. That wasn't normal for me to have that relaxed kind of faith in something. No. No. So I was pretty positive. And so then Jane, 4 letters, one after the other, saying, we're sorry, but no. And I was so discouraged, I forgot that I'd sent it to 5. I gave up. I had a minor tantrum. I thought it's back to those fairy parties for the rest of my life. I had such big dreams, and is this it? Is this it for me?
No, you don't want to be a very old fairy.
I really didn't. I was already getting there. And so then the 5th letter arrived from
that was a good one.
Omnibus Books.
Yeah.
Well, the story goes on because it said this story, it was from the editor at Omnibus. She said, we loved it. But she said, we don't think we're going to be able to find an illustrator until at least 2005. I'll never forget that. And that was the best news I'd ever almost had, if you know what I mean. It was so good. And so what I did is I worked on the story and I added some action. I added a dog chase. And I wrote back in the guise of, I wrote a pretty charming letter because I said, your encouragement's going to get me through a Melbourne winter. Huh? And I said, do you mind giving me any more feedback on the way I've worked on the story? And Penny wrote back and said, we can't better part with it. If you can hang in there while we find an illustrator, we can't better part with it. How do you feel about that? And she said, we'll give you a call in 3 weeks' time. Now, that's where I went horribly wrong because I flicked forward in the diary and I wrote, publisher will call. Wow. And of course I didn't. That morning I woke up, looked at the phone. I'm not kidding. I looked at the phone and I went, today's the day.
It's like waiting for a boyfriend to ring.
Worse. Anyway, eventually, after about 18 months of delayed, yes. So that's the long version. I mean, another way of saying it is that yes, I submitted it, and I never once I did receive that very first bit of feedback. The truth is, I did never look back. I did.
Is that wonderful that we can't bear to part with it? That's fantastic encouragement, isn't it? Yeah.
And then all of the stories that I'd unbeknownst to me had been readying themselves in the wings, just were then in a very natural way formed and ready, and out they came. And so that all happened around about the age of about 30. So that was and I've since given much thought to the relationship between acting and writing. I think it's there, definitely, isn't it? There's a strong relationship between the two, but they're very different at the same time.
When you write, do you find you're getting into your protagonist's head the way you get into a character you're playing?
Yeah.
Similar, yeah. And did you feel that you were a children's writer at that stage?
At that stage, I think I did feel that way. I was very interested in picture books. So every time I went into a bookshop or a library, I was passionate about picture books for a while there. I was studying at the same time. I really enjoyed all of the subjects. I loved poetry. I was studying short story, which was where the idea for my very first novel for adults came about, because it was a crime writing class, and I don't read crime. So wonderful short story teacher said crime writers plot. So the task today is go away and write a plot, a plan. Just brainstorm a plan. So I thought, who reads crime? Yeah, I know, dodgy. No, I know that, okay? Crime schmime. I should never utter those words. So I brainstormed a plan and I went back into the group and we all shared our plans, and it was pretty dark. It was pretty wild, and the group said, you got to write that novel.
Mm-hmm. And you did? And that became your first novel?
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. Your first novel for adults?
I did, yep.
And so you've kind of done a bit of both ever since, haven't you? For children, young adults and adults. Yeah. How do you sort of balance those out?
I don't think I do. I mean, I never think about it. I don't think of it. I just sort of one happens and then I have no plan. I have no plan for that to happen. In fact, I could even sit here and say, no, I'm just going to write adult novels now. But a picture book sort of will arrive.
They just pop up in your mind and then you do them. Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the Underworld now. As I mentioned, that Penguin blurb which says anyone who has ever been 14. And of course, we all been there. And I reckon 14 is just about the most awkward, vulnerable age. I'm going to put you on the spot now, Sophie.
I think you're right.
What were you like at 14?
No, well, I'm sitting here thinking that's when it got hard around 14. It got hard around 13. Hard. 13 and 14 and 15. I don't know if people in the audience are thinking back and thinking, they were... It doesn't need... Could we argue that transition is innately hard for everybody? You could argue that, couldn't you? Because you could say, well, the body has to change. I mean, who's not going to find that? That's confronting, isn't it? Or could you say, in a perfect world or an almost perfect world with really fantastic adult sort of supports all around you and with self-esteem that was in the right place, perhaps 14 could be okay? I don't know the answer to that because that wasn't. It was pretty difficult.
It's just that's the time when all the doubts about yourself start to wake up, don't they? I think very often.
You can have, and there's hormonal changes as well. And so, you can, I think children can suffer depression, but the likelihood of it increases, would you say? In adolescence, it increases. And, well, you're leaving childhood. So all sorts of things are going on developmentally. It's a confronting time. Socially, it's difficult.
Yeah. So look, thinking about Martha Mullins now, many of your characters are young people who are doing it really tough. But Martha's actually in a very privileged life, isn't she, in lots of ways?
She is. She is.
Yeah.
I was up, because again, there's no plan. So when I first encountered Martha on the page, I knew immediately she had come from privilege, and I actually experienced anxiety around whether that could be okay. Isn't that funny? In this complex, unfair world in which we live, how can we ever truly side with or care for someone who had known privilege? Even though I know that's nuts. It's nuts. And I had to be brave. Sophie, you can't try and please, you can't try and be politically correct. And anyway, all of these things are a construct. Her wealth on the page is just another way for me to explore. It's not a real person. It's another way to explore all sorts of different things against a different backdrop. What the hell would you be doing going, well, you can't do that. That doesn't even make any kind of sense.
She's materially well off, but she's emotionally not well off, isn't she?
The 14-year-old soul and all of our own unconscious selves I don't think really understand what privilege means. That unconscious self of Martha still knows deprivation, confusion, fear, it's got really nothing to do with it. It's like I say, it is a different backdrop. It's a different lens, a new lens. I'd explored deprivation through poverty before. I don't want to do the same thing. That also was just another way to explore, severed relationships, or both light and dark. And for some reason that I'm not entirely sure of, I was drawn to something a bit different. Well, I can say I want to do something new. And she made herself known to me.
Now tell us about how she made herself known. There's a wonderful story about you sitting in the basketball court.
My son was doing something called skills and drills on a Friday afternoon. So it was a skills and drills session where every child brings their own ball and they all do the skills and the drills of basketball. So I guess what I'm saying is it's very noisy. There's a lot of balls because the high school gym's got the sprung floors. And I took out the computer, and perhaps it was the nature of so much sound and so much frenzy around me that can create a pretty focused kind of a bubble. It makes walls. It's a wonderful how, I suppose it functions the way white noise does on steroids. So I took out whatever it was, must have been a notepad, and I needed a female character for another novel I was engaged with or battling with. And the female character arrived on the page in her mid-50s, and she spoke with such urgency and such passion and force, and was a new voice, this privilege, this education, this university life. And she hijacked, as soon as that skills and drills session came to an end and I went home and had time to look over the work, I thought, I can't really, there's something here. Because I always choose the path of least resistance. Because writing a novel's hard, I thought it was the path of least, you know what I mean? I choose the characters that seem to have the most to say. I paid a price for that because it was really quite a difficult road. Martha is much closer to me, I'd say, than other protagonists have been. So she was harder to get space from to see, harder to get mastery. When I encountered Martha, she did reference this time of a first period. And I thought, well, as a writer, I better go and explore what that's like on the page. And if it's dead in the water, that's a really lazy way to do it. If there's no energy in it and it doesn't want to be told, you work that out in a couple of pages of writing. It's hard work because you've got to go find out. It's hard. You wish you could just be told. But as soon as I began to develop that, I could feel how much there was there. And there is. It's not something we write about a lot. It is a difficult transition in an imperfect world. And this is in the mid-70s. The relationship with Mum's pretty strained. Mum's kind of perfect and beautiful, and Martha's awkward and academic and shy. And so I could tell immediately it was alive. And so that's when I learned, darn, because when you set out to write a novel, you have to decide what's the trajectory, where does it begin, how far back do you go? And so once I had written those scenes, I thought, well, I have to begin here.
And we follow Martha through her later years as well, but certainly we start when she's 14.
We start when she's 14.
Yeah.
But interestingly, it's really interesting, and this could just sound like me whining a bit. She's only 14 for a pretty short time before she begins to move up through 15 and 17 and beyond. And university, I don't think that's giving away too much. But it's really interesting because 14 is how the story is introduced and the blurb introduced it but maybe there's no denying that that's an important...
There's two really important things to Martha that give her comfort, despite the fact she's got this difficult relationship with her mother, and her father never seems to be there often enough. She idolises him, but he's not there for her. And she has two ways out of this, two comfort zones. One is she goes to boarding school and she has a very close-knit group of friends. And the other is her fascination with the underworld. So tell us about these two things, perhaps the underworld first.
So, Martha's academic and a reader, and she's going to learn Latin. And as an introduction to Latin, the teacher, Miss Brinkotter, introduces the girls to the concept of the underworld. That's when Martha first learns about it. And so, it all took me by surprise. I could just tell when I'm sort of loosely playing on the page, as soon as I used that word and began to play with the idea sentence by sentence of Martha's fascination with the afterlife, I could tell, again, just like periods, this is really interesting. So I can feel that it's interesting. It must be interesting to me. It's deeply interesting to her, and how could it not be? It was deeply interesting to the Greeks and the Romans, and it is to all of us, because nobody knows what happens after we die. And it's about both death and life, and it's rich with myth. It's a little frightening.
It's not going to heaven or hell exactly, is it?
It's not going to heaven or hell. The Greeks and the Romans had a very different idea. Everyone goes there. It's very democratic. It's about the relationships you have with gods, various gods and goddesses. There's all sorts of different sections. There's the Elysian fields where everyone's happy, including poets, as Martha notes. And it just, right on that cusp at 14, there's that period, that difficult relationship at home, and then she learns about the underworld, which has, is the word allure? It's compelling because it is about, it's a cushioning, watery place, but it's also, to put it bluntly, it is death. And Martha is not yet, we don't yet know which side will she go to. Will we see this character? We will want her, I hope. We will want the best, because we can see you've got a private eye view on this brilliant person. Bright, funny. Am I selling? I hope that's a fair observation.
That's why it's scary when she jumps into the water.
It is, because she's not yet convinced. She's not yet convinced. If you've had a strained kind of relationship at home and you live under the roof of a difficult marriage, anyone had that, No,
it's very rare.
It's very rare. I know it's rare. But she's one of those rare characters in the mid-70s where the relationship, and so the afterlife is a lot, and I could feel that. And then when I went to, research it, of course, and it's deeply interesting, and almost every ancient religion and culture has their own unique understanding of an underworld, complete with staircases and gates and lakes and jewels and feasts and stories, and that's very captivating. And imagine being 14 when the line between, it's easier to blur. You've only been 9 a little while ago, and it was before, so there wasn't the internet. Maybe kids weren't as worldly, so the moment you met her when she's jumping into the water, things are messy in that moment, and really she's not a strong swimmer. So it was a pretty critical moment.
There's a bit of tension runs through the whole book, worrying about, Martha's relationship with death, really. Now let's talk about her friendship group at school, because that's also very important to her.
Yeah, she's got brilliant friends. Loyal. It's ordinary friendship. It's not destined always to be roses, but funny, accepting, supportive. They celebrate her quirks. They're eccentric, oddbods like her, black sheep, clever. They're boarding school. So boarding school exists, they become a family.
You mentioned the character's quite close to you, and you also went to boarding school, so I'm wondering if you had a similar group of friends at that time.
So interesting with fiction, because you're similar and you're entirely not.
Sure.
Yeah, it works. It's a difficult thing to articulate where the two of you will cross. But we do cross, and I did go to boarding school, and I did find some of that warmth and those close friendships at boarding school. So maybe, those friendships were informed by that experience. They listened to Elton John. They feast, they dunk biscuits in tea. They have all sorts of rituals that they repeat. You know, there's a statue that they sit by. It's a posh school. There's a statue of a horticulturalist, and each time they come down and drink tea beside it, they always address, I can't remember, Roberta. They're fun. They were really fun.
Well, we're going to give away a little bit of the story here. I hope that's okay.
Yep.
Because Martha, as she gets older, she finds herself becoming attracted to one of the girls in particular, Valerie. So that's a kind of sexuality awakening in her in a world which just doesn't allow for such things at all.
Her world didn't. In fact, the awakening happened very close to the moment I read out, didn't it? Mm. And of course, Martha's got no reference, is that the expression, that no reference points? In fact, when she does try and research any kind of homosexual relationship, she learns that it's okay for men in ancient Rome. In fact, there was a god of homosexuality who had the very first known homosexual relationship. Apollo had, so it wasn't frowned upon. In fact, it was a source of power and pride. And Ovid is very dismissive and judgment. Her favourite poet, Ovid, is very dismissive and scathing and judgmental. I suppose it's all about the patriarchy, isn't it? But Martha at the very same time is complex because she's pretty proud. She pretty much loves it as well. It's precious. And she loves Valerie. And Valerie's brilliant.
There's a lovely section in the book where she goes to Valerie's farm and meets Valerie's family and so on. It's like the overworld, isn't it? The attraction of the overworld.
And it was great fun. I mean, all of the book, for me as the maker, even though we've used words like death and strained relationships, for me, it's all about fun.
Yeah, it's not a gloomy book.
Even difficulty, and this is a lesson I'm really teaching myself at the moment, it's fun. And if it's not, the scene can't stay. So I guess I'm using the word fun in a particular way, but it means it must always be living and breathing and moving. So I learned in the doing that it was a love story, but I had to take all the wrong roads first. So this novel took a bit longer. There was a pandemic and everything.
Doesn't help. But it's a difficult love story though, isn't it? It's for a while she can't even acknowledge to herself what she's feeling.
Because they're both in the same boat. And it takes a bit of courage and a bit of experience, a little bit more maturing. A little bit more maturing to get there.
I thought we'd move on a bit in the story because Martha grows up and she becomes a scholar and she's still very interested in the underworld, and she sort of takes that up in her work at university. And now, I'm not sure how you pronounce this poet's name, so I'll leave you to do it, but she becomes very interested in a certain female poet who I thought you'd made up, but then I did some deep research using Wikipedia, and I found that, in fact, she is a real poet, but for a long time people thought a man was writing her work.
They did. It was pretty convenient. When it came time for Martha to write her thesis, she decided she would write about Rome's only extant female poet. 40 BCE she wrote in, and her name was Sulpicia, and her body of work's pretty small and has always been highly contested, and male scholars have time and time again said these poems could not have been written by a woman. And in fact, when Martha's attending a lecture by this really arrogant, handsome visiting fellow from London who completely dismisses the poetry of Sulpicia, Martha, who really is in her own quiet way a feminist, I suppose, via academia, decides she will write this thesis about these poems, defending the poetry of Sulpicia. And this has been done many times by many young and emerging scholars. So there was material I could learn from and use. And so it was great. I couldn't believe how... I love the serendipity that writing a novel, the serendipitous happenings.
And the things you find out, because, I mean, the only poet I'd heard of who fit that definition was Sappho. I didn't realise there was anybody else.
Exactly. I didn't either. So it was really interesting. The research was interesting all the way along, and I missed it when it came to an end. You know, I went to acting school, but I started a degree, but I didn't become a scholar of the classics. But I love the way the novel gave me that period of time to immerse myself. It probably sounds so dry. You're probably thinking, gosh, you know, Sulpicia, Latin, I mean, you know, but...
Well, I tell you what, let's move on to a character who is actually my favourite character in the book, who's got nothing to do with Sulpicia and Latin, and that's Babs, the grandmother.
Yeah.
I just love Babs.
Yeah. She is she's my favourite. I mean, one of the favourites. And she is Martha's grandmother, and she's pretty outrageous. She's judgmental. She's a snob. She says all the wrong things. And she's also Martha's quiet champion, ultimately. And I absolutely loved her. And I loved that playful, I loved what's that word? Like the opportunity she afforded me. She could refer to Brisbane, for example, as the tart of the party. Now, how could I ever get away? I mean, of course I don't believe that, but it's great having this fantastic... She's got a Shih Tzu Pomeranian Shih Tzu cross. And she says, the Pomeranian for the coat, the Shih Tzu for the perkiness. And it's always on her lap, and it's scented with Joy by Jean Patou, which is a French, as she is always doused in joy. And she's the bright lipstick, everything. She's wildly interested in heritage listings and very anti-developers. And
I probably hate her if I met her in real life, but she's so glorious on the page.
She's so much fun. She cuts Martha's poor father to pieces. She says that because the dog doesn't take to Andrew, and she says it's unfortunate it's all men. She's divisive, wealthy, a little bit of Maggie Smith, possibly, a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I could see that, yes.
But ultimately, she is something of a godsend.
Yeah, she's certainly somebody Martha needs and welcomes in her life, yeah.
And she again, you know, I had to learn how important she was as I went along. It's difficult writing a novel, especially when you're a bit closer. I didn't know how to, in the journey of making the novel, and I don't know how interesting this is because it's just about process, so it might not be so relevant, but to budding writers, I can sometimes squander an opportunity. So, of course, because I was too close, I couldn't see how wonderful she was. If you've made something wonderful, then that, when I say wonderful, that she's rich. And it's learning what elements of the novel do you lean into and bring forward and make a thread in your story.
She's one of these characters that jumps off the page, I think.
Yeah.
She's always great to
so
have.
So much fun because she went to the same boarding school as Martha, and she says in French, she's a Francophile, and she says something in French. I wish I could say it. You know, that education is about more than academic learning. It gives you tells you ways of behaving and the right choices to make. So everything's always alluded to. And I spent a period of time at a boarding school like that. And I was always on the outer. That's not my family. They weren't conservative and didn't come from that at all. I was an outsider of sorts. Mm-hmm. I was inside enough to cope, but I did have an outsider's perspective, and I did pick up on the notion of old money as opposed to new money. And I did explore that. I did explore wealth and the value of money and the divisive nature of money and the mystery around money in the novel, because Andrew, her father, came from a poor place. He had no opportunities and was raised by a single mother. And Martha says her grandmother made him sound like a tuning fork with only, couldn't connect her father with anybody that counted. So Andrew was self-made, and there was some shame around that, whereas Judith came from old money. And Martha understands she's the sort of uncomfortable product of the tension between the two and is very determined to be independent of it because it does feel tainted. So in a way, I'm sitting here thinking now, having said this, it isn't about privilege just taken at face value. It is an exploration of privilege, and Martha is aware at all times in that school, and she carries some shame and stigma around the fact that her dad didn't come from it.
Yeah.
And Babs never lets him forget or never lets anyone forget. So she does. Babs is a product of her time and of her background.
We're going to move to questions in a little while, but one thing I really noticed about this novel is there's a lot about water, isn't there? I mean, it's a place where you might meet the goddesses of the underworld. It's a place where you might die. It's a place you might explore.
To swim?
Yeah.
She teaches herself to swim. I know.
Yes.
I hope it's not too heavy-handed. It kept insisting. And so I'll have to watch that in future work, because we all have our obsessions without realising we've got them.
I don't mean in a bad way. I think it's fine to have lots of...
Yeah, it's a theme. It's a theme, isn't it? It's because ultimately, she describes even being her first experience of being carried within water. Remember at that really critical time, and her first and most bonding moments with her mother are when they go underwater at the Ride pool.
Yeah.
When Martha's about 6 weeks. And the grandmother retells the story, how stories told over and over become myths about how Judith would take Martha into the Ride pool and they would go under and the infant would gaze open-eyed at her mother and they would look back at each other. So I was painting there a closeness because Martha, as we watch her, is capable of intimacy, joy, a lot of good things. She is privileged, not just background, but where she ends up and what she pulls off, she's had some, it wasn't all, there's great riches there.
Yeah. I do have a question which I'm not sure you can answer, but I'll try. One thing I find reading your books is I really, really care for your characters. How do you get us to care in that way?
You're right. I can't answer it. I know what my job, I know technically what I'm to do. That sounds dry. I mean, I know, how do I put it? I have to care by working well. When I say that, what do I mean? I have to employ craft, so I can't show without telling. Is that the right order? Yeah, I can't, no, tell.
No, show without telling.
I can't tell. So if I don't tell, but I show, that means I'm going to have to live with and through whatever it is that has formed this individual. So if I'm going to live through it, leaping off the pier, getting a first period, and I'm going to live through that all the while showing and using the most accurate words I can to show, I'm going to live through it. So I'm going to have a lot invested and the stakes are going to get increasingly higher and higher and higher because I'm going to be spending a lot of time in there. That's the craft of it. And that's all I can say.
Is it stressful entering into that relationship with the character? You're very
I would
deep
say
in the
not.
feelings?
I mean, life is very stressful and I'm not good at, I'm a high stress. The character and the relationship with the character are the stress relief. It doesn't matter that their experiences become at times stressful. Maybe it's all me being a control freak because, I have some control over that. No, it's deeply, I won't say touch wood because it could all go wrong. Always the sense is, as a novelist, is that it could all go wrong, especially in the early stages. But once you're sort of out of the danger zone, then it is very rich. I care just as much. I'm caring just as much. And so I'm living a double life with people I care very much about. And once I know the story and I know the vocabulary and the nature, say, of Babs and Val, it's not stressful. It's stressful learning it. It's stressful learning it. You know what I'm trying to say. It's hard work, but it's not stressful in the way that one can be terrified about the world or the kids or the everyday is a different. It's not like that. It's not like that. It's stressful when the book goes out into the world because that is unknown. Does that answer that?
I think so.
Yeah.
So, anyone in the audience like to ask a question? I think we have roving mics.
Thank you. This has been incredible. I've seen you a few times, Sophie, and every time you speak, you're an incredible performer and articulator. So thank you. I have so many questions, but I think I'll ask one. And that is, you mentioned the danger zone. And there would be writers here, I think, who would like to hear more about that because I feel like everyone can start stories and find good characters, and you've had a lot of experience. So that pivot when you know that you're out of the danger zone.
Oh,
and
yeah, that's
I imagine with your characters, because they are so deep and wide, they must have multiple endings. So how do you know when you're on a path towards somewhere that has an ending?
Yeah, that's a great question. There aren't really multiple endings. From the outset, it seems I naturally search for and want to pin down, which is not a very glamorous way to describe the story arc. I'm desperate to have it and to know it. So it is an anxious bunch of weeks and months because you do, I talked about those wrong paths. You do have to take them and you're always strapped for time and energy and you're always worried that it won't work. And this was a more challenging book. But, of course, I want it to be more challenging. I can't repeat myself. But once it creeps up on you, the turn, but you won't realise it. You won't realise, wow. And it's a feeling of like I'm daily moving forward. I'm not treading water. I can tell it's a mess, but something is unhappy. It's a very unconscious process. So that can feel a little bit magical. Magical is the wrong word, but because it's unconscious work, or is it from the underworld? It's pretty exciting because you're not exactly sure where is it coming from, and you'll fully surprise yourself if that's when it's going well. One ought to. But what I've learned recently about the fun, this taught me, it's always got to have an element of, I think I'm on the right track if it has the word I keep coming back to. This is very recent learnings. We're talking days. Bouncy. Yeah, you're solving problems in a bouncy way. I don't know if that. You're solving scenes in a bouncy way. It doesn't matter if you're describing the worst thing in the world. It's got to have a bounce, like a brainstormy, zany sort of bounce to it. And I suppose I remember with The Choke a bunch of years ago telling someone I'd written 46,000 words. And I remember them saying to me, if you've written 46,000, I reckon you are onto something. Yeah, and I went, wow, I have written 46,000. And I remember thinking, okay, so at the moment I'm always going, 46,000. Remember that guy? He said 46,000. And I sort of cling to that a little bit. But, they could be 46,000 in the wrong direction. But I sort of can't quite tell. Yeah, the unknown zone, it's a big act, it's a big commitment. But I tell myself, well, what else am I going to do? I'm now down to interviews at Bunnings is always in the back of my mind. Because they take workers, they'll take maybe. Those jobs are actually very hard to get because all the teenagers in my area want it. And I'm aware, it looks like it's pretty difficult for books, but I have that, I think, yeah, it's sort of seat of my pants. I mean, that's the act of it. It asks, and, my husband's good because he goes, Sophie, capitalist or artist? Which one? what he's saying is the artist route, it doesn't have the capitalist, it's not the capitalist road, but it's a different kind of richness. That's what he's reminding me. You know, when I'm like anxious about this, that and the other, yeah. So it is rather seat of your pants, but that's the price you pay. Because unless you, who was he quoting the other day? Someone or other who we all know, very famous. Unless it's got an edge of struggle and unknown, then you're not, it's not working.
And it get boring too, wouldn't it? When you know absolutely everything that's going to happen.
Exactly. And you can feel when you are writing, when you write a plan and you're trying to stick to it and you go, this will need to be the scene where the character, and when you do that work, you go, why is this not bouncing? And so my latest, I keep touching wood and I think it's lino or whatever.
The floor's okay.
My latest is, okay, only write the fun scenes then, damn it, because ultimately they're the only ones that readers, well, why are you going to do anything else to people? And so I'm sticking with that for the moment. Oh, I'm not at 46,000 words yet.
And it's something about the bounce. I think that's a good message for any of you out there who are writers or aspiring writers. Give it a bit of bounce.
We were talking about, you know, the skills and drills session.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi, Sophie. Loved your book. How do you think Martha might have been different if she'd had siblings?
She craves them. You really can't tell because Martha's mother may still have projected those things onto her regardless. You know, it's no perfect picture, is it, with siblings? There's no perfect solution. And with siblings it can be difficult, and with divisive parents, siblings can be... She says she would like a sibling. I mean, the grass is always greener, and siblings aren't... We all, I'm sure, know enough about the complexities. She makes her own... I think only children can make their own siblings. I think that's what she does, doesn't she? She makes her own.
She makes her own family, really.
Yeah. So I can't guarantee what it might have been like. Maybe the next one to come along would have been perfect.
I have another question down here.
I wanted to ask if there was anything in your creative process with this novel that surprised you.
With this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, yeah, the whole thing. Yeah, it didn't happen the way the others happened. It was very disconcerting. Yeah, it was harder. It would die and I couldn't solve it. And when I say it would die, briefly, I knew Martha, say, studied the First World War and I had to have her at school. So I thought, well, I'll put her in class with a history teacher and she has to learn the reasons for the First World War. And so then I Googled reasons for the First World War and learned... I did learn at school, but, you know, nationalism, you know, those fracturing alliances, assassination of the Archduke. Was that? Yeah, am I?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I learned.
That's the right war.
And then I had the history teacher teaching Martha. And I thought, God, this is sort of boring, but like it's real. Martha would learn the causes of the... And when I finally showed it to a friend, an insightful friend, she said, Sophie, we pretty much know the reasons for the First World War and we can Google them.
Yeah,
we can learn them. And it was like a light bulb. Yeah, you're right. She goes, we don't really need to see it. And I would have known that naturally myself. I would have known other books. You only put the scenes in which there's a critical change is taking place, momentum forward. Why couldn't I see that?
That brings me to another point, that the stories of the underworld, in some places you're actually telling us the myths and the stories, aren't you, through Martha's own experience. How do you decide when to do that and when to just leave it?
Well, the publisher read it and said we need to know more.
Oh, right.
I needed a bit more... I'm embarrassed to confess this, I needed more outside. I would say it's fair to say I'm pretty self-sufficient and will deliver a manuscript pretty finished. I mean, you know, of course it has to be edited, and I don't mean that, I just mean mostly. I hope that's not, it's not an exaggeration. It's mostly. You'll still edit it for the 18 months, whatever it is, and it's a lot of work in in getting it absolutely there. But this one I needed midway to be told. Like I had another friend who said, that same friend, she said, Sophie, it's not about periods. You can mention the periods, you get 3. 3 periods. I didn't know that. Yeah, and so that's not normal for me. And Mum would say, you're so much closer. Why couldn't, usually I've got the craft, I've got the intuition to feel this. Well, something was getting in the way of me able, to get that bird's eye. I couldn't get the bird's eye. But this could be good to learn this. You could learn this from me now. A novel can still happen chaotically. Yeah, it can still be 3 months of sitting down at the novel, writing all the wrong scenes, constantly scratching your head, but not giving up, but just continuing on with the boring writing, not giving up, having the scene at the property that you describe, having that just roll out effortlessly, full of joy. That tells you, okay, well, that works, but and for it to be hodgepodge and to need a bit of outside, you keep showing up. That was the only thing I did right. I figure it was the only thing I didn't give up because I knew she was cool and she was, she deserved it, but I can't remember what the question was. Yeah. I can't remember what the question was. Yeah. That's what it was like to write. So, okay, so that will tell me in the future it could get hard again. It could get hard again. I think this time I wouldn't wait so long to get some outside. Why would I wait so long? It's not like anyone needed to write a thesis. They just needed to say, hey, Sophie, the grandmother's great. Bring her in more. Oh,
Are you working on a new thing now or thinking about something?
Because I always think everything's going to fall apart, I can't discuss it. But, I mean, I was thinking on the way here, people say, are you working on a new thing? That's a given. I mean, I can't even conceive of a life. What would happen? What would that be like if I wasn't? Yeah, I can't. I just tell myself, I remind myself, be that kid who don't worry about the world. It's really hard world. It's unfair. It's impossible. Don't be that person who makes things up. It's just about when it all boils down to it. I mean, yeah, it's craft and language, but you're making things up. That's a spontaneous, childlike, or that's rooted in the best of what it is, isn't it? To be imagined. It's the game of imagining.
Well, on that note, I think, Sophie, you will be around to sign books after this event, won't you? Well, can you all join me in thanking the wonderful Sofie Laguna?
Clunes Booktown Festival is presented by Creative Clunes. Tax-deductible donations to keep our stories alive can be made at creativeclunes.org.au. This podcast has been made possible due to the generous support of the Hugh Williamson Foundation.